Hello, everyone. I am Tate, and I am the chair of the Global Experiential Advisory Board that works on the GALENOS project. So this is basically the patient and public involvement aspect of the project, and the advisory board is at the core of that aspect.
My name's Julian Elliott. I'm based in Melbourne, Australia. My role in GALENOS is leading the data and AI part of the project. So a lot of it's around how do we make sure we're capturing data in a way that then is most useful to the world? And also how can we best use AI to kind of accelerate the work that we're doing so we can essentially generate more evidence that's of use for people around the world in mental health. And then other than that, I work in an organization called Future Evidence, and we do a lot of work essentially building new models for evidence. So how do we use research in a way that is, creating a very clear understanding of what the research has found, what it hasn't, and making that kind of useful for people. What does PPI mean?
PPI, patient and public involvement, basically just looking at how systems center or speak to, addressing the needs of the public, the patients, and just looking at how we can kind of adjust and make them more person-centered and
Mm.
relevant to the people,
Mm.
the service, the people that are trying to get the service.
So, Tate, tell me a little bit about how in GALENOS we've been using this approach of combining co-production and data science.
Okay, so I'll start with defining what co-production is. It's basically a collaborative process where people with lived experience work alongside mental health researchers, in this case, in the GALENOS project, mental health researchers, policymakers, professionals, academics, and the like. And it's a process that we have used or are using to ensure that whatever research, the direction that we would like research to take in terms of mental health is relevant to the people that it is trying to address. So that's basically co-production. And how
Mm.
we have intersected it with data science in this project, I think the one thing I've really noticed is that we have been able to challenge some assumptions behind the questions that data scientists ask, So, in terms of, I could give an example of maybe say, why aren't people using a certain service? And co-production doesn't just answer these questions, but it helps to reframe the questions that matter. And one thing I've also seen is that I've come to acknowledge that, when we're looking at co-production, it looks like completely different worlds when you compare, with what you were describing about AI and data science and things like that. But I think the beauty of this project is that we've been able to really see how each of these actually feed into each other. So we're not trying to have one form of knowledge dominating the other, but we're trying to see how we can, bring them together and come up with an outcome that is impactful, that is credible, that really speaks to what we're trying to achieve as a project. So yeah, I think that's one thing I've seen. And it has been challenging. I won't lie, it has really been challenging. I think co-production in itself is quite messy, but
Mm.
the fact that, we are challenging the systems we're trying to address while we're working in them. And I think that has been a strength of ours, in that, we
Mm.
have the immediate feedback loops. We look at what's working and what's not working while we're actually living it. So that has been a good part of the experience. Yeah. I don't know. I think I'd like to ask you if you had any expectations in terms of working alongside lived experience. What were your expectations, and possibly
Oh,
how have they changed?
yeah, great question. My background actually is a doctor working in HIV. Essentially I can't imagine a world without very strong participation of people who are really affected by a
Mhm.
particular, topic or condition, whatever. Like that's the world that I grew up in. So my expectation is very much the kind of model of activism. You know,
Okay.
that's that's what I understand. Yeah, I think it's this thing where we understand that people who live, with a particular condition or in particular context are experts, absolutely. And not just some sort of trite kind of staying like, oh, we're all experts, but like truly, truly experts. And
Mhm.
Yeah, like earlier in my career was on like different groups, panels. In Australia, we had a national guideline panel, and we had, people with HIV on that panel who were some of the best contributors really to the discussions, really just making incredible. And to be honest, I actually often knew the science better than many of the researchers, actually, in reality. Yeah, so that's my mental model.
That's great. That's great to hear. And I really like that you're also acknowledging that, lived experience experts are experts in their own right as well.
Mm,
We
mm.
often think we just have people with lived experience providing insight or just sharing their stories. But, they are actually experts in their own right. And I really love that coming from, someone in your field as well, because it really shows that you have an understanding of how we're doing this work and yeah. So in terms of, of the future, right, how do you think, the work that we're doing now can inform future initiatives?
Yeah, great question. I think I said this quite often at the start of this project, which is Galenos is really a trailblazer. Huge kudos, I think, to the team that came together and also to Welcome for the vision, and I think also the courage to really invest in a very new way of working. That I think was, it's kind of truly groundbreaking, the approach that we're taking in Galenos about, trying to build really significant, diverse global communities who come together essentially to curate evidence and make that available to the world, and bringing in all those different perspectives and different expertise. But I think since the start of the project, we're seeing increasingly other projects that are taking similar sort of approach. Some of these have been funded by Welcome as well, but others from other organizations, and not just in health. Many others in other areas of health, also in climate, education, employment. So, we're seeing that this model is gradually getting more and more traction. Within our own organization, we work in what's called the Alliance for Living Evidence, or ALIVE. And, we are in many other fields trying to kind of advance this model. But I think also what's exciting is there's now this much broader conversation about what does this future look like in a way in which the world can really engage with evidence and curate the data. And by that, I mean really, use very, very kind of rigorous methodology to identify the scientific data relevant to particular questions and collect it, ensure it's of high quality, and then make it available in ways that are then useful for people around the world. So the traditional model is a published systematic review, which of course we're doing. We're now doing these kind of so-called living systematic review, which essentially means academic papers that summarize research in a particular area, but are regularly updated. So as new research emerges, where we become aware of that very quickly, but also these ways where we're making the data available. And those data can then be used by different groups, different people, different evidence products around the world. So I think this is
Yeah.
the future. I think this is the way
Yeah.
that the evidence world is evolving. And ultimately, I think we'll better serve people, no matter what kind of concerns or context those people have. So I think it's very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. And I think, just to mention as well, I think we have also built a system where there's trust, between both groups, the PPI group and the data scientists, the researchers,
Mm.
and, just people who we're working alongside with. And that has made the process a bit more seamless. I think, for researchers who may be considering this approach, it may seem daunting at first, but I think there are a lot of benefits, that you can reap from having this kind of collaboration. And like you're rightfully saying, it becomes more relevant, you really look at, what we're trying to achieve, the direction we want research to go. And even in terms of how people who are being targeted, I guess, by, by the data actually interpret the data as well. It makes it much more easier. It doesn't become something so foreign. And, but we're building a system where, each and every group that is involved in assimilating or that has the outputs disseminated to them is actually able to interpret what it means, when it comes to the work that we're doing. So yeah, I think I really appreciate that. And I also love this conversation that we're having. And I think it also just shows how collaborative we've been, in GALENOS, giving each other a voice, giving each other space to talk, and just sharing how we feel things should be moving. So yeah, thank you so much, Julian.
Thank you, Tate. It's been a wonderful conversation.